Morning, morning, everybody. Michelle is here on January 22nd, 2026. January 22nd, 2026. I'm here. I just had my breakfast, and man, I get it. Breakfast is my favorite part of the day. Yeah, breakfast is. Breakfast and lunch are my favorite parts of the day. I look forward to getting up in the morning, and have my coffee and breakfast. And sometimes I have breakfast and lunch and dinner during the breakfast time because of my schedule. You know how I schedule myself, because I don't want to eat too late in the day, because when I do, I have a hard time sleeping. I really do. But anyway, I wanted to come on through and talk about some things. A lot is happening all over our world, and that's how it's going to be forever. Actually, something's going to be happening all over the world. And so supposedly they're in this particular, when I say they, the so-called elites. And the so-called elites are politicians, business leaders, religious leaders, actors and actresses, so-called billionaires, so-called all these so-called innovators, visionaries. They're all supposedly those especially in the scientific medical field. And I'll explain why that's important in a few. So they're all supposedly meeting somewhere. Supposedly this is a yearly thing, or who knows? They're meeting, they're discussing and talking. And guess who they're discussing and talking about? Supposedly humanity, ourselves. They're supposedly there attempting to figure out what to do with us. I told you, I said, what is going to happen to us? And sadly, a lot of those, I guess they're people, they are determining what's going to happen to humanity as a whole. And sometimes that starts, with certain elements of our society. A lot of those, and so keep this in mind too, there's a public display of concern. You have these actors and actresses coming out talking about the environment, talking about this or that or the other, their concerns, and da 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 da. And they believe, especially these actresses and actors and actresses, they believe that they know us. When I say us, humanity as a whole, and know what's best for us. When in actuality, they're only thinking about themselves, their children, their pedigree. Don't be fooled. Let's move on. So those meetings, there are some that, like I said, are public facing, but the more crucial meetings are held in secret locations. Even though they claim they're there in this particular region, it may be in a tunnel somewhere, for all we know, in the mountains somewhere. It's not where, they'll probably show their faces in these public facing events, take pictures with everybody and shaking hands and all this superficiality. But in the background, there's always something else going on. And I told you, consider that every time you are told something. Okay, especially from these major figures that take up all of our screen time. They follow us all over the place. I'll be on Facebook, and I'll like something from one of these celebrities. And guess what? Before you know it, they're on YouTube. They're on another platform. How does that happen? I'm not even following them. I just commented. I like their pictures. I love eye candy. I love looking at beautiful things, which usually are, I'm not going to say, figure it out. So the ones that we ought, the part of the event that we ought to pay attention to is not, look, I listened to a couple of speeches of people, and they sound encouraging. But so far, for the last at least 50 years or more, it's all been talk. Anyone can do a beautiful speech, okay, and get you encouraged and motivated. But I don't know of any speech that has resulted in ending war. Okay, does anybody know what speech caused us to end wars? There hasn't been one. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in war. It's the same thing. Deja vu, deja vu, deja vu. We're just, we're spinning, spinning, spinning. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That's all we do. And that's why we have these yearly meetings or yearly events where people go and meet up together, eat great food, drink until their heart's desire, and then come back home and do the same things that they've done for decades upon decades. Okay? But again, you need to, if you choose to, everything's free will. And a lot of people are understanding free will, but then there's still going to be that criminal negative energy force that's going to tell you have no free will. You have no free will, which is BS. But that's why you have to be silent. Be silent about your destruction, reconstruction, your self-education. Be silent about that. Pay attention, though, to what's happening. Pay attention. And if you have relatives all over the world, get their take on what's happening in their own backyards. You'll be surprised. You really will. Because, again, the media, and I forgot to add, the media is also there at these so-called events, but they know something that they will not share with the public. They will not, because they know that will put them out of a job, possibly get them prosecuted, if anything, from interference and withholding of evidence of things. You understand? So yes, so they're out and about over there. They're talking amongst themselves, eating good food, while other people could barely can barely eat a full meal. They're skiing, they're dancing, and probably sleeping with each other, which that's what they've done that for decades upon decades. Nothing new. That's what I'm saying. It's nothing new. It's a deja vu, deja vu, deja vu. Just consider other histories or events in time. Series of events. It's all the same. It's the same caliber of people, the same pedigree, nepotism, lineage, especially. And the lineage is very important because I told you about in the 1600s, there was a particular man in the 1600s who had an unusual name, had an unusual last name, and was of German descent. Okay, and this particular man turned out to be a serial killer, and also had incest behaviors with, I can't remember if it's either his sister or his daughter. Whereas, and this particular pedigree, this particular lineage, this particular ancestry, they know their history. Okay, but they don't understand about, first of all, they don't understand about cause and effect. And also at the same time, they don't understand about the passing of the baton, meaning, the type of history that's stored within each individual and how it manifests itself in future generation of people. Now, this particular, and it's all in the form of energy. That's why we ought to be against the death penalty. The death penalty harms all of us eventually. Okay, stay with me. So this energy continues to flow within this lineage, within this ancestry, within this pedigree of people, because that's what they focus on. Somehow you think you are, because again, when you die, I disappear. This physicalness of me disappear, but my energy remains. Okay, within that energy, there's a storage of information that eventually realives itself into somebody that's brand new, fresh and clean. But somehow, because of the power of that energy, the intenseness of that energy, it seems to appear back into the same ancestry. I know it sounds crazy, but it does. And it has. So this particular individual in the 1600s was executed once they figured out that he was a serial killer, as well as, like I said, involved in incestual behavior with either his sister, his daughter, within his family. He was of German descent. He had this unusual last name, which has changed over the course of time, because it sounded derogatory, in my opinion, but it ended up in that same ancestral line, because now this person is alive, unknown if they're not well, but they're alive. So that's why when you interfere with how we are to evolve ourselves, interfere with the biodiversities, interfere with the fauna and the flora, and interfere with human beings via what are you doing in these back labs, these hidden labs, interfering. It will reveal itself. And anybody thinking and knowing how to think critically can figure it out. You can figure out, okay, this is as a result of this. This is as a result of that. That's why there's no way in hell we are descendants of apes. If anybody's thinking critically, they know is the other way around. Because we have a history and pattern of what? Interfering, and more so interfering with as we are now. We are splicing things, integrating things in the fauna and flora. We're attempting to we are reinventing certain biology-based realities to suit ourselves. And in other words, we are interfering with biology. Instead of learning from biology and following the lead of this planet, which knows how to cultivate life. So now we're going to suffer the consequences of that interference. Whereas the weather is going to, we already see it with the weather. And again, it's too late. Even though some people will protect themselves by hiding in caves and mountains, but they don't understand, again, the cause and effect of what happened in the 40s and these secret nuclear testings that's hidden where? That's stored where? Underground. So when you are silently reinventing yourself or reconstructing yourself, just be grounded and be courageous, because there's a lot of stuff that could cause people to want to take themselves out, and unfortunately that's going to happen regardless. No one's going to be able to stop that, because that's just, like I said, the signs of the times. Okay, it's the culmination. Okay, and as we are ushering towards the dawning of the age of Aquarius, February 3rd, 2029. There's supposed to be in 2029 this major massive meteor asteroid that's supposed to hit the planet between the North and Black Seas. It either shows up in 2029 or it'll show up in 2036. Okay, the dark NASA knows this, and hopefully they're working on it to know how to deflect it. Okay, it's supposed to be here sometime in April of 2029. But again, that's all based on what NASA is doing. The back end of NASA that the front end knows anything about. The same thing with the military. There's a front end military. Those putting on the suits and people coming on, these former military so-called snipers, and, bragging about how powerful they thought they were. And they created some atrocities by, unaliving innocent women usually and children. Yeah, there's some of them bragging about that and thinking they're so, that's what we have. That's the entertaining part of the military. But in the back end, okay, just think, it's not a coincidence that especially in the continent of Africa because it's a huge continent, you'll find small fires of events, metaphor. There's something going on in the north of Africa, in the south of Africa, the west, the east, like small fires, metaphor, where there's tension and buildup, and before you know it, they're in a civil war. That's not it. That's not an accident. That's intentional. Okay, that's that dark part of the military that's responsible. Okay, I won't say nothing else. Figure it out. Give yourself, trust yourself. I put out something, and whereas I said, just trust yourself. Okay, trust yourself. And trust the decisions that you've made, especially if you've done them out of righteousness, out of genuine goodness of humanity in yourself. And do everything in your power to protect that by trusting yourself. These criminal negative energy forces are going to come at you. That's why I said deconstruction of any religious dogma is dangerous if you're announcing it. I announce it. Well, I haven't necessarily announced it, but I've advocate for that because for me, I've already incorporated the benefits of that, so I can't be touched. Yes, you can take me out physically, but I have a consciousness stored of energy. We all do, but it's been activated enough to where I know what I'm doing. Okay, so trust yourself, be kind and gentle with yourself, and dissect what's being told to us on these screens, especially via the so-called media. Independent too. A lot of them are being bought or were bought, and they coming through and generating that same rhetoric. Okay, it's all a correlation together. Okay, so trust yourself, be kind and gentle with yourself, and trust me, I will be back.